Hey everyone, here is a walk around video of this very cool 80's cowlick bug that's been in our shop for, I don't know, maybe a month and a half or so. So this car has been in the same family since it was only a couple years old. If I remember correctly, they bought the car in about 70 or 71, I think, and it's a 67. So it was a fairly new car when they bought it. It was originally driven by, I believe it was one of the sisters, and she drove the car for a very long time and then sold it to her brother, who is currently the owner of it. And I think he's the one who back in the day did all the cowlick stuff to it. And so, yeah, it's been kind of like that ever since, I'm thinking like the 80's. And so the car had been sitting for a long time, and I don't believe he had a good place to work on the car. So they went ahead and brought it in here for me to, or for us to go through it, make sure it was safe, fix some little things that weren't really working very well or not working at all, you know, tune up, etc. And so, yeah, we went to work on this car, and I'll try and post down in the description a video showing when the car first came in so you can kind of see the before and after. But it's been quite a transformation, I have to say here. So, one of the first things that we did when the car came in is he actually drove the car here. He dropped it off, and then I think I moved it in the parking lot once, and then I went to move it into the shop later, and it wouldn't. Not only would it not start, but when you turned on the key, there was nothing, like not so much as an idiot light or anything at all, much less would it start. And so it turns out the battery cables were all very loose. And it's kind of amazing that he made it over here because, again, I think just by me moving it in the parking lot, the cable finally like pretty much fell loose and then wasn't making any connection. And so I did like a minor repair on that. And so it should be fine now. But yeah, kind of that's how it started off anyway. And then I went ahead and did some basic maintenance on it. Oil change, went and checked the valves. Valves were all fine. I should mention it's got a 1915 cc motor in it. I'll show you that in a little bit. Dual 40 IDF Webers and little header with dual quiet packs. Very cool 80's touch there. And yeah, so did the tune-up on it. One of the other things that was a little odd when the car came in is it had disc brakes on the back, but on the front it was still running drum brakes, which normally people, if anything, they'll put them on the front but not back. And he had a reason for it, and I honestly don't remember what it was. But anyway, the other, so the stance of the car is pretty classic cowlick, you know, about stock height in front and lowered but not, you know, scraping the ground on the front. But the front before was lowered 100% with the beam, which it has an adjustable beam in it. But the problem is when you go even this low with just the beam only is that the front arms, the front trailing arms end up at kind of an relatively extreme angle. They end up sort of pointed up like this instead of neutral or even down slightly. And it makes the ride terrible. This car had pretty much no front suspension at all. And so I did go ahead and upgrade the front to drop spindles and disc brakes. And so now the front arms are sitting more or less level or even slightly pointed downward like they are stock, because most of the lowering now is coming from the spindles itself, which of course are 2.5 inch. And so I don't know if I can really do this with one hand and for you to see it, but it does have suspension now. I can't really move it much with one hand, so take my word for it. It's got front suspension now. And so that was kind of a big thing. And then while we're at it, of course, I think it had like a stock master cylinder in it. I don't know what it was, and I didn't really trust it. So we went ahead and put a dual circuit master cylinder in there while we're at it. And then, of course, bled the brakes and did all that good stuff. Another big thing on this car, well, lots of things cosmetically that we did on this car. So one is the deck lid when the car came in was painted black, which obviously doesn't match the rest of the car. And so I pulled off a taillight housing and took that to the paint shop that I use in Westminster, I think they are. and had them color match up some paint, and they did a really good job. I mean, it's pretty hard to tell that that's not an exact match. And so then I had my paint and body guy, Renee, go ahead and work his magic. So in addition to being painted black, it just had a lot of like bad areas on it from a bodywork perspective. And so he went and again worked his magic on it, got it looking really good, and then sprayed it with that paint. And then we went ahead and did a color sand and buff on it to smoothen it out. The rest of the car, it's got its fair share of little scratches and stuff on it like that, but the paint was very dull and kind of chalky when the car came in. And so to kind of revive the rest of the car, we did a full color sand and polish and buff on the paint. And really, like, I was actually shocked at how well this paint job came out. I think this might be the original paint on the car. I don't think it's been resprayed. And this color, by the way, is Java green. But yeah, and anyway, it came out fantastic. And, of course, again, the car still has a lot of wear and stuff on the paint and little chips and stuff. But to me, it's actually really cool that it's a survivor from, it survived the 80s kind of cow look thing, and it's here today. It's got kind of an odd front set of T-bars on it. I don't ever remember seeing a pair like that before. If somebody knows of these having been manufactured, let me know. But I'm wondering if they're kind of like a one-off thing that somebody made. I don't really know. Like I said, I haven't seen a pair like that, but it's kind of cool and kind of unique. Oddly, the car still retains a rear bumper, but whatever. It's all good. So another thing we did while we were working on the brakes is the rear axle seals were leaking. I think it might have only been leaking on one side, but of course we always replace those in pairs. So took care of that. The tires on it were still okay from a tread perspective, but they had a lot of little like age cracks on them and looked like they were, not really at a safe point in their service life anymore. So we went ahead and replaced those. And while I was at it, so we stayed with 145s, kind of the classic cowlick tire in front. And then in back, I went ahead and upgraded him from 165s, which is what was on there. And that's basically like a stock width VW tire. But again, he does have a big motor in here, and it is a cowlick car. So I went ahead and upgraded the back to a 195, and it fills out the fenders a lot better. It really looks pretty perfect now as far as I'm concerned, filling out the fender. Proper cowlick car here now. Although, back in the 80s, I think a lot of guys still did run 165s. Wasn't uncommon on cowlick cars, but went ahead and upgraded him because he's got a pretty peppy little motor in this thing, and so I'm sure he'll appreciate having a little bit more tire on the ground. Some electrical issues other than the one I mentioned earlier with the battery. The horn didn't work, and it was wired kind of incorrectly, and the horn button wasn't installed, so it took me a little while to kind of chase that down. The tail lights and brake lights weren't really working, so again, just a little time troubleshooting those and getting them to work. The engine, let me go ahead and show the engine now, and then I'll talk about the alarm system here. So here is the engine. Again, pretty classic looking little cowlick motor here with dual Webers and crossbar linkage and, a chrome coil mounted there in the middle and aftermarket pulley, all that kind of good stuff. So a couple things. One is the carburetors had very old and seemed like they were degrading air filter elements on them that I think were probably could have been releasing particles into the carburetors. And then also there were no velocity stacks in them at all, which normally any car is going to run better when it has velocity stacks on it, just because it provides much smoother airflow through the carburetors and through the secondary Venturis and so on and so forth. So I went ahead and bought and installed a set of Venturis for them while I was at it, and the new air cleaner elements. The other thing I noticed when I was tuning the carburetors was I laid my hand against one of the spark plug wires that were in there and got zapped pretty good. So his wires were also, his ignition wires were also leaking pretty bad. So I went ahead and put a new set of wires in there. again, you know, synced the carbs, did a little tune up, etc. This thing runs really good now. It runs way better than when it came in, as you could sort of imagine. But yeah, great little motor. Like I said, it's what I was told was it's a 1915, kind of small-ish carburetors, but you know, not too bad for a 1915. But yeah, runs really good. Okay, let me go ahead and close this. Another thing I did was I got his deck lid to actually latch. It wouldn't latch before, so I put some standoffs between the latch catch there, and then so that it wouldn't be metal on metal, I added some weather stripping on the bottom of the deck lid, so that's what's actually contacting the apron down there instead of metal to metal, which is what you get when you tilt them back like this. It ends up that the bottom lip touches the apron, so put a little weather strip there to calm that down, and shouldn't rattle at all now. Okay, so the last major thing that I did was install an alarm system. So the car had actually been stolen at some point in its life, and so they really wanted an alarm system. I said, okay, I can do that. And so I looked around, and believe it or not, on Amazon, I found Viper still makes car alarms. I hadn't installed a car alarm in a really, really long time. And I had one in my Cowlick car back in the 80s. Mine was a Clifford, but I remember from back then it was kind of like Clifford and Viper were the two sort of main brands of aftermarket alarm systems. And so, yeah, Viper still makes them. They still make a fairly simplified one that's a good fit for a car like this because, you know, there's no auto door locks or anything like that. But let's see here. There it was. The only thing that's slightly disappointing on it is the siren is a bit quiet, but probably you could hear that. And then disarming. And let me show you guys. I did put the LED on the dash, which you can see right there. Yeah, so there's the LED on the dash. And here, let's go ahead and set it off. There it is. And you see the dashes on the light flash, tail lights flash, all that kind of alarm stuff. And then you shut it off. And if you guys remember these alarms, they'll sort of show you, so to speak, that that it's been tripped by the flashing pattern of the LED light. And then from there, whenever you turn the ignition on, when you go to start it, then it'll kind of reset that alarm system. So that's kind of fun. Honestly, I kind of enjoyed installing the alarm system and wiring it into the doors and wiring it into the ignition system. So when the alarm system is armed on here, or if it's going off, it cuts power to the ignition coil, so the car can't easily be started. So a little added safety there. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. I think those are really the major things we did to the car. Some other little minor things here and there, but that kind of covers it. So I think they are going to come and get it this week. So before it leaves, if the weather if it ever stops raining, which it's supposed to do more or less for the next week here, I'll try and get out and do another test drive of it and get a short driving video and post that up for you guys to see too. So that's it for now, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.